In 1946, there was a historic meeting, a conference, held in Havana at the Hotel Nacional de Cuba. This wasn't just any conference, it wasn't academic, trade-related, government, or business. Well, I guess it kind of was business-related, a business of the organized variety. But before we get to that, today's video has a sponsor, and there's kind of a coincidental tie-in to our cocktail today. Today's video is brought to us by Original Grain Watches. And if you go to originalgrain.com/drink and use the code DRINK, you'll save an extra 10% off, and they're running up to $100 off site-wide for Father's Day. And you can stack this coupon on top for the lowest price ever. Original Grain has been making watches for 11 years now and has removed over 250,000 plastic bottles from the ocean and planted more than 600,000 trees. The watch you see before you is the minimalist 40mm whiskey espresso, which I love for its simplicity and elegance, and it kind of just matches my bar. Original Grain is partnering up with Jack Daniel's with a collection of 4 unique timepieces made with authentic Jack Daniel's whiskey barrels right out of Lynchburg, Tennessee. Remember, you can go to originalgrain.com/drink and use the code DRINK, and you'll save an extra 10% off. They're running up to $100 off site-wide. Thank you to Original Grain for sponsoring this episode. This historic meeting in Havana was between the Mafia, set up by Charles Lucky Luciano, and brought together mobsters from New York, Chicago, New Orleans, New Jersey, Vegas, and Florida. The most famous mobster of that time, Al Capone, was not in attendance. This was after he was already imprisoned on Alcatraz and released due to illness, but 2 cousins of his were sent to Havana, Charlie and Rocco Fischetti, as chaperones. Guards, maybe, for the conference's most famous attendee, who came with a briefcase containing $2 million in cash. Old Blue Eyes, the chairman of the board, the Sultan of Swoon, Frank Sinatra, was at this meeting. Was the briefcase of cash a gift for Luciano, a payment for debts, or something else? I don't know, and I honestly don't want to dive too deep into this topic. But the Havana Conference has no true connection to today's cocktail, except for the cool name and the nod to the main star of this cocktail, which is Jack Daniel's. That was Frank's favorite. And this cocktail is also a nod to a tropical standard cocktail as well. Over the past year, I've been wanting to incorporate Jack Daniel's into a cocktail here because it gets virtually no love in the cocktail world. The most iconic bottle in the world ever, and not much love in cocktails. And basically, it's not to be seen in really any popular tropical cocktail. Now, I'm not saying it deserves to be in every drink, but it seemed like a fun challenge. And last year, when I first had the tropical standard Navy Grog and that Coca-Cola Grog concentrate, I knew I wanted to use that to make a Jack and Coke type of riff. I thought about this a lot over the last year, tried a few things, and then about 6 months ago, I made the Bay of Pigs from the Tropical Standard book without reading the backstory behind that cocktail. Now, sometime later, I read it and I realized that the Bay of Pigs is just an elevated rum and Coke. It's probably the best rum and Coke you're ever gonna have. Named after a historic event in Cuba, the Bay of Pigs. Kind of the perfect application to just plug in Jack Daniel's, but I tried that and it didn't really work, just using Jack Daniel's instead of rum. The inherent sweetness of whiskey and Jack Daniel's, not sugar sweetness, but just kind of the character, didn't plug in exactly to that cocktail. So I've adjusted a few things and put it into a drink served on ice. Now, Frank Sinatra happened to love Jack Daniel's, and the Havana Conference name for this drink is a play on the Bay of Pigs cocktail, also being named after an important historical event in Cuba. Now, did they serve Jack Daniel's at the Havana Conference? Sure. I mean, no one can prove otherwise in this case. Maybe he had a little extra space in that briefcase. You can use any Jack Daniel's for this. The triple mash works well and is 100 proof. Or if you want to get fancy, the single barrel proof, that's 130-ish proof depending on the bottle. Or you could go vintage, like this unopened bottle of Jack Daniel's. This is the only unopened bottle I have, and it's kind of a little family heirloom. But for today's cocktail, I'm going with a brand new bottle of Old No. 7. I'm also going to split the base here with a light rum, and if you have something from Havana, that would be preferable, but I don't, partly because of the Bay of Pigs. Instead, I'm going to use Hamilton 87. Now, I could have used this limited edition Bacardi, but it doesn't taste that great. And really, we're kind of playing a nod here to Havana or to Cuban-style rums, but really, we're using this because it gives the much-needed ABV in the cocktail, and it's also going to tone down the Jack Daniel's a little because otherwise it might be a little bit too strong for this drink. This drink uses the tropical standard grog concentrate, which I have made here before, but to refresh, here's how to make it. Start by taking 21 grams of allspice berries and either crush them or do a quick grind, then lightly toast them. Add the Coca-Cola and sugar, and bring it to a simmer. Reduce the heat to low and cover. After 15 minutes, turn off the heat and then let it sit covered for 12 to 24 hours. These instructions and the exact measurements will be in this episode's description. In addition to the grog concentrate, the rest of the ingredients here are there to heighten the Coca-Cola flavor, or what we think is a Coca-Cola flavor. For this one, you'll need Angostura bitters, vanilla extract, lime juice, cinnamon syrup, Grand Marnier, the tropical standard grog concentrate, a light rum, and of course, Jack Daniels. So let's go. Let's make the Havana Conference, and you can shake this, but of course, I'm just going to use a drink mixer just because. I'm going to start with 2 dashes of Angostura bitters, 3 drops of vanilla extract, 1 ounce of lime juice, 1/4 ounce of cinnamon syrup, 1/4 ounce of Grand Marnier, 1/2 ounce of grog concentrate, 1 ounce of a light rum, and 1 ounce of Jack Daniels. Garnish with some fresh mint, a lime wedge, and some freshly grated nutmeg. Of course, I always keep one of these in my pocket. So there you go, the Havana Conference. All right, let's try it. So, I mean, you could do whatever you want with this, but I think it is important to cut the Jack Daniels in half because it's there and you can tell that it's whiskey. Unless you're like really into whiskeys, I don't know if you're going to necessarily know that that's 100% Jack Daniels, but it is definitely a whiskey or bourbon that you can taste in there. If you really like that flavor, you might want to do a full ounce, but I think it works much better when you're cutting it with the light rum. That also just brings it back into our world of tropical rum cocktails. But the Hamilton 87, I don't think you're really gonna taste the flavor of that. That's a great light rum. It's probably one of the best like pure light rums, but it's there to provide some needed ABV to help out that Jack Daniels and allow us to kind of cut through that strong whiskey flavor. The other things in there just work together to provide like Coca-Cola flavor. The grog concentrate, you're just using 1/2 ounce, and of that, you do have Coca-Cola in there, but it's not enough Coca-Cola to come through and taste like Jack and Coke or rum and Coke. But when you can bolster those flavors with other things like cinnamon and Grand Marnier, that sweet and bitter barrel-aged orange flavor you can only get from Grand Marnier. And then Angostura provides some spice as well as that vanilla to help really bring forward at least my interpretation of Coca-Cola flavors. It doesn't taste like Coca-Cola's in the cocktail, but it does have those spicy and pleasant flavors that you get out of Coca-Cola. Now the garnish of mint is kind of bringing it back to that tropical cocktail vibe that we all know, garnishing with mint. And the lime wedge is there for one, it looks good. And number two, you're gonna find that in things like rum and Coke. This is there that if you feel like this cocktail might be a touch too sweet, which I think it's fine, but there are a lot of layers of sweetness here. You could easily pop that off and squeeze in some more lime juice to get a little more pop of acidity. So listen, I think this is fantastic. I think it's delicious. I'm not patting myself on the back for this one because this isn't that original of an idea. It's really taking the basic structure of the Trader Vic's Navy Grog, which got reinterpreted from Tropical Standard to make our own grog concentrate, because that's really what comes through. and then taking that Navy Grog recipe and then combining it with something a little different. So taking the Navy Grog Tropical Standard and the Bay of Pigs and turning it into a whiskey cocktail with Jack Daniels. So that is it for this one. I'm Derek, this is Make and Drink. If you haven't subscribed to this channel already, please do so. Give this video a like below. Check out the Patreon page if you want to support this channel more. And otherwise, I will see you on the next one.